Sean, the question of funding the Ukrainian war still rumbles on, with the Democratic government in the US still wanting to pile another 60 odd billion in. You've got the UK in smaller terms wanting to do it. You've got voices in EU saying the job isn't over. We need to see it through to the end, whatever that means. I mean, quite why at this stage I'm baffled, because Trump is arriving in a couple of weeks' time, and Speaker Johnson has made it very clear that the funding that's been requested by the Biden administration is not going to happen, and it's not appropriate until the new president comes in. So it's difficult to understand, to sort of unpick it politically as well.
No, it is. I mean, in a way, I think we're back into this logic that in our country, if you lose a vote, you're out, and the next team is in, and it's all pretty seamless. In America, the king is dead. Long live the king.
Wait a couple of months.
Yeah,
Long live the king.
Yeah, and it is a couple of months, and you've got this strange interregnum where inevitably you've got President Biden looking to protect his legacy, so he's trying to do everything possible he can to tie the hands of his successor, and he's got 2 months to do it. Meanwhile, you've got Trump, who is already alluding to what he's going to be focusing on.
You mean stating it absolutely, totally clearly?
Yeah. Well, but without actually, issuing the laws of the land. But you can just imagine how many memos he's scribbling out, saying that on the 21st, he's going to be issuing. So the Trump effect.
Hundreds of executive orders.
Well,
it will happen.
It will happen. And therefore, you've got this really odd situation where, even to the point, which I'm not sure how helpful it is, but Trump is criticised this last week. We've got a bit of video clip of him, of the impact of him criticising the Biden administration's decision to send long-range missiles that can then be used into Russia.
Donald Trump has criticized Ukraine's use of U.S.-supplied missiles to attack deep into Russian territory, calling it crazy and saying that it escalates the conflict. He disagreed vehemently with sending missiles hundreds of miles deep into Russia and wondered why the United States is approving this. Trump also said that he has a plan to end the conflict, but didn't provide any details. He emphasized that a quick resolution to the almost 3-year-old war needs to happen.
Now, the Kremlin came back after this and praised President Trump for his wisdom.
Lovely, yeah.
And now clearly all of this is positioning ready for when he does come into power. He's very famously said, in 24 hours, I'll have sorted this war. Now, harsh reality, he won't be able to do that. I'm pretty confident. But there's no doubt that President Trump, that by then will be really keen to make sure that Putin is ready to talk, Zelensky is ready to talk, and see where that conversation goes. And I think where Trump's positioning himself is saying, I want to bring this war to an end. One thing that I do think, though, we don't talk much about, is that Trump isn't known for being weak. He will not want to be seen to be rolled over by Putin. And therefore, what levers has he got to force Putin to make concessions so that there is I'm not saying a just peace, but a peace in which, that it can be played back to the West as not being capitulating to, Putin's aims and objectives.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think ultimately one dimension of Trump, which is really clear, he uses his threats and his sort of hard power to ultimately try and get better trading relationships with countries, or as many as he possibly can. So it will be interesting, for example, to see who he invites to inauguration, and then who's prepared to actually turn up, because he's already full throttle on trading. He had a big session the other day at Mar-a-Lago. Some global CEO turned up and from the stage committed $100 billion in new money into America and 100,000 jobs. Trump got up, didn't actually thank the guy, said 100 billion, excuse me, 1,000 billion, 100 billion. Let's make it 200 billion. The guy got back up and said, okay, 200 billion.
I'm thrilled to announce that SoftBank will be investing $100 billion in America, creating 100,000 American jobs at a minimum.
I would really like to celebrate the great victory of President Trump. And my confidence level to the economy of the United States has tremendously increased with his victory.
Would you make it $200 billion instead of he can actually, believe it or not, he can actually afford to do that. Would you do that?
Well, my promise is 100, but he's now asking to do more. I will try to make it happen.
That's good.
All right.
200. He'll make it happen. 200 billion investment.
So, slightly tongue-in-cheek from me, but what I think is behind some of these moves is to try and get better trading relationships as well.
I've no doubt you're right. I mean, there were reports, weren't there, that Xi Jinping had been invited to the inauguration and he turned it down.
Yeah,
because
he turned it down, is he?
Yeah, because he knows full well that Trump's number one measure is to slap 20%, tariffs on Chinese goods.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever we may think of, Trump, it's going to be a change of mood in the White House. There's going to be a change of tempo, a change of approach. I try and avoid the political side of this, but I do think from a military perspective, we have been probably too wishy-washy, too lacking resolve, political resolve and intent. Why is that important? Because if you go all the way back to our nuclear deterrent, it's not just about capability, it's also about our intent, our resolve to use it should it need to be used. And that's just as powerful as the weapon itself. You've got to sow that seed of doubt. Well, it's pretty clear over the last few decades. You alluded the other day about Obama's red lines in Syria because of, weapons. We guaranteed Ukraine's sovereignty, yet Russia moved into Crimea and we did nothing about it. When Russia invaded in 2022, actually we did nothing about it. There are consequences if you aren't robust, and I think Trump is going to reset that whole diplomacy. It's just going to be a really interesting ride along the way.
Yeah, the reality is that countries are also running out of money. They've got their own internal political issues. I mean, the UK has basically taken money from the farmers, have taken money from old age pensioners. They've now reneged on a promise for 3 to 4 million retired ladies who were promised compensation by the Labour government if they got into power. There's 3 to 4 million of those. Each of them was going to get at least £2,000 some time ago. That was gone up with inflation. That's approaching 10 billion. So, countries all over Europe are struggling politically with funds to then go and spend another 100 million in Ukraine. Politically is becoming increasingly difficult.
Yeah, I think it is. But for me, there's the slightly more difficult thing is that this committing money is one thing, because you can turn that tap off pretty quickly if you want to. Ukraine doesn't need money at the moment. It needs weapons. Weapons means you have to invest in defense industry to actually create the capacity. And that has been very slow. The West has been very slow to do that. Now, if you are now thinking, you're a businessman, it might take a year and a lot of money to invest in order to create a factory that's going to generate those weapons. Based on the mood music today, based on what President Trump is saying, based on what President Zelensky's been saying, do you think there's a realistic prospect of the war coming to an end within the year? And if you think there is the possibility of that happening, you're not going to make the investments in the factories and the like, are you? It's going to be a completely nugatory, complete waste of money when all political parties across Europe, as you say, have lots of conflicting priorities. So I think it's less about the hard cash and it's more about the investment in weapons that given the mood music that's happening at the moment, I suspect people are using the right mouth music. They want to sound supportive, but they're going to wait until late January to find out just how this is all going to play out. And you don't want to be wasting billions of pounds investing in a brand new weapons facility that within a few weeks might become completely redundant.
Yes. You know what, Sean? That's why you should be in charge.
Uh-oh.